Great. And good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for making time this evening. I'm Kelly Nevins. I'm the CEO of the Women's Fund of Rhode Island, and our mission is to invest in women and girls, which we do through research, advocacy, grant making, and strategic partnerships designed to achieve gender equity through systemic change. I'm sure we'll solve that issue tomorrow. It is my immense pleasure to partner with RAMP, Real Access Motivates Progress, on tonight's program, and specifically with Tina. And she's going to share some announcements. So the floor is yours.
Yep, I just wanted to, hello everybody, I am Tina Guenette. For those who may not know who I am the CEO and founder of RAMP, Real Access Motivates Progress. A couple of housekeeping things. You do have the ability to turn on captioning. So if you're having a hard time hearing or you would like to use captioning, all you have to do is go to your settings and turn on captioning. We ask that you keep your mics muted until you're speaking. We'd love to see your wonderful faces, but as Kelly said, we are recording this, so that is totally up to you, as well as we will have time for questions at the end of the session. So please remain all of your questions till the end. But if it's something that we're talking about and you don't want to forget, please just write it in the chat and we will try to get back to it when we get to the questions and answers at the end. So that is all I have. Unless others have questions about the housekeeping, I'm turning it back over to Kelly.
Okay. So I know we have a couple new people in the room. I'll just start again by saying I'm Kelly Nevins, the CEO of the Women's Fund of Rhode Island. I'll be moderating tonight's program, but I wanted to start with a few grounding facts. In Rhode Island, roughly 15% of adults identify as having some sort of disability, making people with disabilities one of the largest and most diverse communities in our state. And yet, only 37% of working age Rhode Islanders with disabilities are employed, compared with nearly double that rate for those without a disability. That gap is not about talent or ambition, it's about access. Too often, accessibility is framed as a legal requirement or a special accommodation. But in reality, accessible workplaces are stronger workplaces. Research consistently shows that inclusive employers experience higher retention, stronger morale, and better problem solving. And many accommodations cost little or nothing to implement. Tonight's program is about moving beyond good intentions. It's about understanding what accessibility really means, physically, culturally, and systematically, and what it looks like when employers begin or design workplaces where people with disabilities can not just participate, but actually thrive. At the Women's Fund of Rhode Island, we believe equity is not just a side initiative, it's a workforce strategy. And tonight, we're here to turn intention into action. So we have a great panel tonight. You've already met Tina Guenette. She is the president and CEO of RAMP, Real Access Motivates Progress. This is a national nonprofit that she founded in 2019. Tina is a powerful advocate for disability access, working to remove both physical barriers and the limiting assumptions that too often shape workplaces and communities. Her work reminds us that accessibility is not charity, it's not compliance, it's about dignity, opportunity, and belonging by design. Next, we have Dr. Gary Convertino. Dr. Convertino brings more than 20 years of experience as a human resources executive. He's a consultant, a professional coach, and a professor. He supports people by navigating career transitions through the Job Club of Rhode Island, and mentors young people through RISE. He also serves as the chair of the Pawtucket Personnel Board and on the Board of Trustees for the Boys and Girls Club of Pawtucket. He brings critical employer and HR lens to how systems, policies, and practices can either open doors or quietly close them. Next, we have Kim Einloth. Kim is Rhode Island's State Director for Living Innovations, which is a service of Mosaic. and has more than 35 years of leadership in human services. Her career spans frontline coaching through executive management with a consistent focus on person-centered, inclusive systems. Kim is widely respected for building strong partnerships with Rhode Island employers to connect talented candidates with disabilities to meaningful and sustainable employment. And last but not least, we have Bradon Crough. Bradon is a senior at Bryant University, where his capstone project focused on updating the Women's Fund of Rhode Island's Equity in the Workplace Toolkit. And Bradon brings a research-driven, next-generation perspective to the conversation, helping us to understand how accessibility, belonging, and flexibility are shaping what emerging professionals expect from their employers and how workplaces can evolve to meet the moment. So we have a fantastic panel. We're going to start with a bunch of questions and also give the audience time to ask questions. So the first question will be directed to Bradon and Tina. Why is it important to have accessible workplaces?
I'll begin because I'm going to be eventually in the workforce, hopefully in the next couple months. But the biggest importance of having accessible workplaces for me in particular, and for my colleagues here at Bryant, is it's the simple economic side of things. So it is a business school first and foremost, and a lot of our general education is based in economics. So that's what I brought into working with the Women's Fund of Rhode Island Workplace Toolkit. And looking at the economic side of things, it just makes a lot more sense to have a lot more people in the workforce that can do a lot more things. And additionally, during my research, I looked a lot into psychological safety in the workplace and how that affects people's economic output and financial means of a company. And when people feel like they are valued and when people feel like they fit in an organization, they just do better work.
Thank you.
That is great. You've hit the nail on the head, Bradon. Um, we love data. Everybody around here loves data. My love hate relationship with data is only good as the questions that you ask. The only data that we could really find about how many people use a mobility aid in the state is if they had to evacuate the state of Rhode Island today, 56% of Rhode Islanders are registered as mobility aid evacuations. So think about that as being in the workplace. If you're not accessible and your doors are not open to everybody, you're missing out on half the state. I do believe that number is a lot higher because that's registered. We all know Rhode Islanders hate to register for anything. So those are the ones who are the quadriplegic, the paraplegic, the people who absolutely need in an emergency to be helped with evacuation. Think of all your family and friends who may have gotten to a car accident or may start be using a walker, a wheelchair, a cane. Most of them don't even identify ever as using a mobility aid or a process. So you're missing out on more than half the state. So it's a money thing. You can raise your bottom line by the more people that you can let into your business. It's just functionally the way it should be. By being accessible, you are now opening to a bigger workforce and a bigger bottom line.
Thank you both. So the next question is for both Gary and Kim. When we talk about accessibility, many people think first about ramps and elevators. What does true workplace accessibility actually include? And what are employers most often overlooking?
I'll go first. Thank you, Kim. I appreciate that. So first and foremost, thank you everybody for being here today. I appreciate that. This is a really important topic. Bradon, you were awesome at the beginning there. What you said was right on. So thank you for that as well. I do think really that accessibility in the workplace is really about inclusiveness, welcoming. I always tell people, DEI, as far as I'm concerned, is still around, whatever people think. But I also add the B to that, right? DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And I always think that inclusion is opening the door, but belonging is the hug, right? Brings people to where they can all participate in everyday work. So in that capacity, I don't think getting people into the door is the issue from what I've seen in the workplace. I think it's sustainability. What do we do so that we can help those who want to be at work feel comfortable every day? And what is it that we have to teach employers so that they understand what accommodations? I think that's the word of the day, is what accommodations can we offer so that people really understand that sustainability means what are we doing to support all the time, not just getting them in the door, but all the time those who want to work. And that's more than ramps, of course, as you said, and I appreciate that, Kelly. But it's really always about everyday support and everyday understanding and everyday education and everyday culture for everybody who's around as well. It's not just the person who might have the disability who's working, but it's also the people around. My brother is the vice president of an insurance company, and he came to me and he said, Gary, can you help me, with, we want to really do a program for helping people with disabilities. And he thought, oh, we have the elevator and it fits, it's big enough to fit a person in a wheelchair. I was like, well, what are you talking about? That's the easy part. The hard part really is that we want to make sure that person feels inclusive, belonged, and well understood, that there's a lot that they can offer, as Bradon said, to the workforce. And I think that's where the education comes in. And once I told them that, and once we helped everybody in that department learn and understand the understanding of inclusiveness and belonging, I think it worked out great. And he's hired 2 people who are in wheelchairs who are working great, and they're doing great, and he's happy and they're making very good money. I should put that on the table as well. So I hope that answered that question to some degree. I'm going to turn it over to Kim now, and thank you.
Thank you, Gary. I'll try to just not repeat anything that Gary said, but I'll just try to add to it. And also thank you all for being here, and thank you for having me. It is a pleasure to talk about this topic. It is something that I have spent my life's work in being involved in at one level or another. And one of the things that I think that gets overlooked first and foremost is just people's attitude towards people with disabilities. My work has been rooted in intellectual and developmental disabilities. And so sometimes just sheer expectations or the thought of it being bigger than it is. I love that Gary mentioned culture. I think that when it comes down to what it looks like, that inclusivity, that belonging, that culture has a firm foundation where everyone can thrive. So it really isn't, as Gary mentioned, just about the person who has a disability. It benefits the whole workforce when you're thinking about things like communication. When it comes to orientation and onboarding and training, what does that look like? Are the materials understood? Is there a lot of jargon? So in some settings, it's important to understand and use that jargon. In other settings, not so much. So thinking about how it is that people are communicating with each other, thinking about some really low-cost solutions to those accommodations that Gary mentioned. Sometimes there's this thought that it's going to cost a lot of money to accommodate somebody's need, when in fact, it really can be as simple as thinking about some sensory items, lighting, temperature, some materials that people can use that everyone can benefit from. Again, not just the person with a disability. So I think it really does come down to just really looking at a place, a space, a culture where people can thrive, where everyone wins. So I'll turn it back over to Kelly.
I love the idea, obviously, of everyone winning. And also Gary's statement about belonging, feeling like the hug that welcomes people in. I'm sorry, Gary, you were about to say?
Nope. I was just going to follow up with Kim, and my apologies that, I'm going to put it into the, hold on here, I got to pop up, sorry. I'm going to put it into the chat from RAMP, some of the options that you have from the government to help with the costs associated with creating accessibility and accommodations. The state of Rhode Island is awesome. I think sometimes we overlook the little state that we have that has a big heart towards its constituents, and I think that should be noted. The small business disabled access credit, it's, all of those aspects that are associated with credits associated with, hiring people with disabilities, the workplace accessibility grant program, offering up to $5,000 towards helping your business be much more accommodating to people who have disabilities, and then job training tax credit. And then the WOTC is a federal program that I use all the time with my clients. So, look at that resource that I just put in there, and first of all, we should turn it over and give a clap to Tina, because it's coming from her website, not mine. So I think that's really good that we're able to offer those items there. So I just wanted to
the one addition I would add to that is not only do you get the $5,000 workforce workability grant, once you become accessible, there's $15,000 in tax breaks that you can take each and every year to keep the process going. So you're right. The state of Rhode Island is incredible. People just doesn't know what's out there.
All right, so we're going to turn this back to Tina. Tina, your work focuses both on physical spaces, but also mindsets. What are the most common barriers you see, structural or cultural, that employers don't realize that they're creating?
I think the biggest barrier that I understand is the person. It's the fear of what they don't know. Simple accommodations can make it accessible. It's the perception. I have to say, a lot of the workspaces or businesses or events that I go to, it's not big structural things. Sometimes it's a matter of changing one screw on the bathroom door to flip it so the door opens out instead of in. It's literally that simple to make something more accessible. A picture doesn't make it accessible, but being perceptive, being usability. So I think we need to change people's perception. They automatically see me rolling in a wheelchair if I'm going out to eat with, say, my son. Many times they'll say to him, what does she need? He's like, well, she's sitting right there and I'm going to walk away for 5 minutes because you just opened the door to her speech. She can speak for herself. So I think it's the perception that people automatically, especially the ones who have visible disabilities. I know invisible disabilities are just as strong, but I can never not disclose my disability when I am rolling up in a rhinestone wheelchair. You can't hide the fact of, I'm in the room. But because I'm in a wheelchair, my legs don't work. Everything else functions fully accessibly. My brain works, my mouth works. Trust me, my mouth works more than most people want it to. We need to change our perception of what disability really is. Let's break it down. There are going to be some disabilities that aren't going to be able to actually function in the workforce. It's reality, but that's the minority. There are so many disabilities that can work and function in the workforce. And, I'm going to call out one of my friends who are out on the call right now. Me and Christina used to go out all the time to schools, and we used to say, who can't do stairs? And they would all say me because I'm in a wheelchair. But Christina and her disability, she can't bend her knees to do stairs either. So it's a perception. Just because she's walking doesn't mean she can have that accessibility or doesn't need an accommodation. So I think the biggest barrier is people's fear and perception.
Yeah, and I'm noting in the chat, forgive me if I say your name wrong, Peyote Lenore is talking about being the co-lead of the neurodiversity employee resource group at their workplace. So lots of times neurodiversities don't show up, like you don't necessarily see them. And yet they are people that need to have who navigate the world differently than the average person. So thanks for sharing, Peyote. I appreciate your time in the chat. Tina, you've worked with organizations that want to do better, but don't know where to start. What are 2 to 3 low cost but high impact changes that any workplace can do to become more accessible?
Number one, contact ramp. That's really simply the easiest thing to do because there are so many things that people try to do to follow the ADA. But did you guys not know that push buttons on doors aren't even mandated by the ADA right now? So we want the ADA as an accommodation, but we want to go beyond it. We want to make it workable. So by contacting somebody with a disability like ramp, when we come out, we can show you ways that you can become accessible. Your front door, your bathroom, and 80% of your business. That's what we're looking for. No one's going to be 100% accessible. We get that because there are so many disabilities out there that we're going to be leaving somebody out. But if we can get in, we can use the bathroom, and we can get around most of the store. That's one of the things that really needs to take the barriers down. Again, the Governor's Workforce Board $5,000 grant, the tax breaks, and again, just educate yourself, because again, people with neurodiversity or some of these silent or invisible disabilities, as I say, are a lot cheaper, honestly, to make accommodations for. Change the lighting, change the temperature, change this, that it doesn't really even cost you anything to make that accommodation. So it's easy if you were educated to know, what do I need to do? So that's what we walk people through. And those are the kind of things that we want people to address. But we want you to do it, as I call it, the smarticle way. It's my own word, the smarticle way, by talking to somebody who uses it and functions. Because again, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, but we all heard of the veterans home that was built maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It's simply beautiful. When they first built it, they built 22 of the doors smaller than the old veterans home. Now you're talking about veterans who are larger, who are using bigger equipment, who can't fit, and the building was not usable for the veterans that they wanted to put in there. By changing the doorways, opened up.
Oh dear. Tina, you frozen? Okay, we're going to move on, and hopefully Tina will be able to jump back on. Are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, you froze as you were talking
I'm
about.
sorry. Again, I'm out in the middle of nowhere, but I don't know where I left off. But if you talk to somebody who uses the accommodations to make it usable, you're spending the money in the right place and not wasting any money. So to me, that's the best resource that you can do, is talk to somebody who uses it, so we're spending the money in the right place.
Tina, do you want to take just a moment to talk about what the ramp stamp is?
Oh, the ramp stamp of approval. It's our new initiative from 2024. We go out to businesses for free to assess your business and to guide you with what you need to change, how to change your front doors, what vendors you should be using for ramps or whatever, how to change your bathrooms, how to set up your business to be fully accessible. And at the end of that, you sign a quick terms and conditions with us, and you get a ramp stamp of approval, where we put it on our website. So now people coming into Rhode Island can say, hey, I want to go to a restaurant. That one's ramp stamp of approved. These are the accommodations. And that's the way we do it. And we're going to be turning it into an app soon. But it's a great way for all businesses, events, and anything to become accessible and get ramp stamp of approved.
And let me just interject with that, if I may, because Tina and I went to an event at a church. And at that church, she spoke pretty much on this exact same topic. Then right after that, she did a ramp approval for the church. It was very cool, very thorough as well. And I think that church was thrilled to have her there and to get that stamp of right after that meeting. So just putting that out, that it's definitely a cool thing.
Thank you. Gary, let's move on to you. From an HR and talent management perspective, where in the employment life cycle do people with disabilities most often fall out? You mentioned this. Maybe expand on it and tell us why.
I think it is the daily work. I don't really think it is the interview. I think the interview really reflects more so on the person's skill set, competencies, and behaviors, right? So that's what HR people hire on: skill sets, competencies, and behaviors. We don't hire if you have a cane or if you have a wheelchair. We really hire your ability to meet the job description, and if it has accommodations associated with it, so be it. And I think most, or at least my clients, are very much willing to do that and want to do that. I think, again, it's a sustainability, like I talked about when I first started speaking earlier in today's session. I think it's really getting the understanding of the culture, as Kim said. It's understanding that, what are the accommodations that are needed? What is the support that's needed on a daily basis? I think that's where I have, if we take my brother at the insurance company, I think that's where I have to kind of offer that support, he's just, he'll ask questions and I have to kind of answer those questions to him, like, oh, do I have to offer a bigger desk? He doesn't seem comfortable at the desk he's at. And I'm like, did you ask him? It's, like, ask him. And then, oh no, I don't want to do that. I'm like, of course, great conversation is really what makes a person feels comfortable and welcome. So have that open conversation, and then, make it at the point where they're already in, they're already there, they're already working. That's where you have to focus. And maybe, and is it peyote, right? And you seem to suggest it was the interview process, or at least in your post. So if you want to speak to that, please do. But if you think I'm wrong, that it's the interview process that maybe people aren't used to, at least with my clients, I get them over that. And now it's more about sustainability.
I think more on the like the autism spectrum is where we're having an issue. I work for a really large company, but I just think the interview process can be tough for people who have a problem with like eye contact or just like interview processes in general. So I think that there's just like there could be more opportunity for people who aren't used to having those types of communications. So
that
I think we're missing out on a group of people that could be really good workers who just might not be good interviewees.
So that could play in the training of hiring managers.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Which we also have like an active group who's working on training the interviewers. So like we're kind of working together for that. So
right. So that's where I was going to go is, are you working with the interviewers and the interviewees, by the way, and saying, is there a possibility that they can understand the interview process as an interviewee? Is that something you do as well?
Yeah. So we're working on that, but we haven't gotten that far. So we're kind of in like brainstorming phase, I guess.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Peyote.
Thanks.
Back to you, Gary. Many employers worry about legal risk or costs. How can HR leaders reframe disability inclusion as a workforce strength rather than a compliance obligation?
Yeah. So I'm not going to lie to you. That is a problem because it's a problem just in general with HR. And I know Lynn is here, and I think I saw Valerie too. So, I understand that they probably, and Rob Rod of Rhode Island SHRM being present today, by the way. So the fact of the matter is, though, that in that case, a lot of times people do get a little bit concerned and legalese. HR used to be, I think, more people oriented. Now it's more legalese oriented. And that is a bummer to me because I have a big sign, right over here. You can't see it, that says put human in human resources. You want to put the human element in human resources. And a lot of time that's missing. I'm sure Lynn can understand, can speak to that too. And the fact of the matter is, though, I try to push back against that. And you have to take chances. You have to invest into your employees and potential employees, and you have to take risk. And that's it. That's where it is today. But people are really not willing to do the risk factor anymore. They're very compliant oriented. They're very risk averse, I guess you could take. So it takes a lot of challenges to get them past that. So I would say that right now, that's probably one of the biggest factors we have is that risk aversion because they're so nervous about having, problems in the future. So we'll do our best, but that's a work in progress.
Thank you. Let's turn to Kim. Kim, you work at the intersection of employers and job seekers with disabilities. What makes an employer a truly effective partner in creating accessible employment opportunities?
Well, I think the use of the word partner is really key. And it starts with the employer and the potential employee or that candidate. And in the work that I've done, it often will involve the support of a provider organization or a vocational rehabilitation counselor or someone else who can bridge any opportunities that need bridging. So that example of an interview, and I think Peyote said it best, there are some people that are really well suited to do the work. And if the interview is the obstacle, sometimes there's a great opportunity for partnership with someone in supported employment, someone who can really help bridge that gap and help that person shine, make sure that their skills and knowledge and abilities come forward, and that we look at interviewing differently. So I think that partnership goes back to creating that culture, creating that workplace that values neurodiversity and sees it as a competitive advantage, sees it as a way to bring different points of view and different skill sets and different contributions, which really, when I describe it like that, isn't like any other workplace if you take the disability in or out of it. So I think it's working on those pieces that contribute to that positive, supportive culture that everyone wants to work in. And so when we think about those, as I was mentioning earlier, maybe there's communication that comes across in a way that everyone can universally understand, using a universal design when you're approaching training and onboarding. And I think Gary was the one who had mentioned, or maybe it was somebody else, making sure that frontline supervisors, managers have the tools that they need, have the skills that they need to support a neurodiverse workforce. In my case, neurodiverse or any sort of disability. So really thinking about how it is that we're setting everybody up for success, including looking at each employee and really discovering their strengths and really leveraging those strengths. So thinking about, sometimes it's called customized employment or job carving, but really, really thinking about who makes up the team and where it is everybody can do their best work to be the most productive and efficient and really satisfied with doing a great job and feeling good about that. So I wouldn't underestimate the value of creating that culture where everyone's skills are appreciated and there's group contribution and it's recognized and supervisors really have the tools that they need to do that effectively.
I know many Rhode Island employers practice strength-based employment, particularly through the push that Leadership Rhode Island has been working with employers across the state. So, Kim, what you're saying, I think, is just a natural extension of that. You know, how do we make sure everybody can use their best skills and make a difference within their workplace? Kim, what role do community-based organizations and service providers play in helping employers move from intention to implementation?
Yeah, I've mentioned a couple of things. One is they can serve as that bridge. They can be that person that comes in and actually meets with an employer ahead of time and can maybe answer the questions that people are hesitant to ask. A skilled provider organization can come in and do a little bit of an assessment and take a look, explore, discover what are those pain points? What is it that the business needs? It could be something that they weren't even thinking about posting a position for. So the provider organizations have a lot of skills and a lot of knowledge from everything from reasonable accommodations to those tax credits that Gary was mentioning earlier. There's a lot of incentives for people with disabilities to work, and there's a lot of incentives for employers to employ people with disabilities. So I think that those provider organizations can be an excellent partner. They can provide some assistance and support in that initial onboarding and orientation. They can provide some job coaching that may help that employee get off on the right foot. I think when it comes to job coaching and peer mentoring, that's a really natural way to bring somebody into a new workplace. So again, it really doesn't have anything to do with disability. It has everything to do with welcoming everyone and setting them up for success in a place where everyone can thrive. Just looking at my notes and thinking if there's anything that I didn't mention, but I think I've covered it.
Kim, can you give an example of a successful employer partnership where accessibility led to better retention, productivity, and workplace culture?
Yes, I can. Without naming the business, I can think of a business that we were invited to come into. We meaning the Rhode Island Association of People Supporting Employment First. We go by the acronym Rhode Island APSE. I have had the pleasure of being the co-president and vice president for a number of years. And so in that role, we were invited to come in. The employer was really interested in opening up their pool of candidates, and it was really 100% based on need. They were becoming, they were coming into a situation where the crisis was really going to affect their operations. And so they had thought about ahead of time what roles people could fill. And then they gave us a tour of their manufacturing plant. And we saw the opportunity there in that some of the tools I was talking about earlier, giving instruction by the use of pictures. And it was intended for people that didn't speak English as their first language. And just thinking about, oh, that might really work for somebody who maybe can't read. So really looking at what they already had in place and then being able to give some suggestions like maybe taking a look at flexible scheduling, or maybe break time looks a little different for the person that was going into that role or the people that were being considered for that role. Thinking about the social aspect of what lunch would look like. So thinking about break time and what that looks like and how it is they can approach that inclusivity that they really wanted to achieve. So in that circumstance, we were invited in as a support network, and then we connected them with several people with the talent and the skills and the knowledge. A little bit, they had to build on that, but that was okay. They had a training program. So we were able to connect this employer who really wanted to expand their pool, and people are experiencing success in that environment. And it's because that employer wants it to work. They were able to take some of our feedback, and it really comes down to the person who's taken the job. They're doing great. They love it. They work hard. They enjoy their paycheck just like anybody else. And it really has changed the way that people hadn't thought it would change. And that is that mutual respect, that everybody's coming into work a little bit happier, a little bit lighter. People are really enjoying each other's company because people are happier. So I have hundreds of examples of where this has worked, can work. And at some point, I'll drop in the chat a couple of links for everyone to click on after this meeting. And you can see several examples from the Community Provider Network of Rhode Island and from the Rhode Island Association of People Supporting Employment First. And they're just brief snippets of success stories of what it can look like for employers to employ people with intellectual and developmental disabilities.
Thanks, Kim. You know, it's interesting. You sort of flagged the people who speak languages other than English. In workplaces, many of them have already adapted to working with employees who are different from the mainstream. And this is, it's in that same vein. It doesn't have to be scary. So love that you shared that as an example. All right, last but not least, we're circling the track. We're coming to Bradon. Bradon, is part of your capstone at Bryant University, you and your teammates really looked at our equity in the workplace toolkit and looked at a variety of ways that we could make Rhode Island more accessible. What surprised you most when you dug into the data, and maybe share some best practices that you saw around disability inclusion in the workplace?
I think it was probably less about the data, but more about the concepts. And I'll explain what I mean. Throughout my whole life, growing up, I've been taught that it's your job to advocate for yourself, and it's your job to make your way up in the company. It's your job to really push your performance and show your employer that you are the best person to do it. And this is this and this is that. But what I found when I was doing my research was actually kind of the flip side of that, is that a lot of this disability inclusion work and equity work in general actually starts from your employer. and your employer coming to you, and your employer making sure that you are getting what you need to in order to succeed, your employer coming to you and really phrasing these conversations so that you know how to work and what your clear goals are. And it all starts with that communication that Kim and Gary were talking about earlier. That's another aspect that, quite frankly, this is my first class that I've really taken on a lot of HR and best practices. But the communication aspect of these things it is undervalued in our current market. And really framing these conversations was another thing. I looked at one of the studies, and in one of my recommendations to you, Kelly, was creating an aspect of where when you're in a performance review with an employee, you really want to frame that conversation. It's less about them, but it's more about we. And you'd be surprised about how toned down that conversation gets and how much the passions that somebody's coming in, it really starts to calm them down. And then you can really start working on solutions to a problem rather than just making it an us versus them situation.
Thank you. And you are a senior. You're getting ready to graduate. I know you have plans perhaps to go to grad school, but at some point you're going to also be gainfully employed full time, we expect. What signals would tell you that an employer genuinely values accessibility versus simply complying with what the law says?
Um, Quite frankly, and simply talking about it in the interview. If they don't mention it in the interview and I have to ask, that's usually a worse sign about things, because a lot of these interviews nowadays with the best practices that we suggested and that we researched happens that a lot of these interviews go in blind and they don't know you. They don't know what you need, and they don't know your experiences. But if they never ask you and they never really give you an opportunity to tell your story, that is probably a bad sign. But when they do, it's a really good sign because it shows that they care about you as a person and less about the numbers aspect of, oh, we need someone to fill this exact position to get this exact role and do these exact things, blah blah blah. But the flexibility that the employer is willing to have really shows that they're willing to invest in you rather than just what you can do.
Great. All right, so I'm going to ask some more general questions for the entire panel, just a couple of them, and then we will open this up to the audience. So Rhode Island's employment gap for people with disabilities is pretty stark. From your vantage point, what is the single biggest misconception that continues to hold employers back from hiring or advancing workers with disabilities? Any one of you can jump in.
Well, I'll take that, I guess, from an HR perspective. Or Kim, do you want to go? I don't want to interrupt. You sure? All right. I think from an HR perspective, anyway, I think it really is, knowledge content. And one of the things I think would be great, this is a fantastic start to that, right? Because we're all learning and educating ourselves and, getting to know the community. And that's real important as well. But maybe even for me, what are some of the places or some of the aspects we can work together so that people who have disabilities are so much more accessible to the interview process, and then getting them into the job is probably easier. But I think to get them to the interview process is that gap, I think, a little bit. So that's something if anybody wants to offer some input.
One of the things that I will say is, I don't know, many people know that I am a member of the United States Access Board. And one of the things that we talked about in just our quarterly meetings today, 12% of the federal government and a lot of their agencies, they have to employ people with disabilities. What they do, though, and I know everybody's up against the federal government right now, but one thing that they have been doing along the way is people with disabilities get to put their resumes in early. Their resumes are checked to make sure that they check all the boxes for that job, and they're allowed to do that job for 6 months and show the person that they can do the job before they open it up to everybody else where they get lost in the field. To me, that's one great way of getting past the fear, giving people the opportunity to do the job and to show you that anybody can do anything with the right opportunities. It also bypasses the whole interviewee process. As long as they check all the boxes for the job, they're allowed to train on that job or to do the job in the meantime. So to me, I think it's a great way to break down that wall and start hiring people with disabilities.
I'll just add that in my experience, when I started as a job coach and then through my career, one of the things that I think I've heard the most is this fear or this assumption that people with disabilities are less reliable or a greater risk or not as productive. And the data proves otherwise. Studies have shown time and time again that employees with disabilities have equal or better attendance, their safety records, and their job performance compared to their colleagues. So it's just not true. And so sometimes it's meeting that employer where they're at and showing them the evidence or making them aware again of those are accommodations going to cost me a lot of money. Tina said it. Sometimes it's just adjusting a hinge, a screw, door opens this way, not that way. There are so many examples of low cost accommodations that I think that's a very common myth. That people think it's really expensive and outrageous and I can't possibly do that. So it's just presenting the facts that it's actually just not true.
And if you could advise state leaders or funders on one policy or investment that would most improve employment outcomes for people with disabilities, what would that be?
I will take this one if nobody else wants to. I think having a percentage of how many you have to have an accessibility plan when you open your business, and there should be a percentage of disabled people that you hire. By meeting those benchmarks along the way, it forces you to open your perspective to trying out somebody new. I don't want to mention the name, just like Kim didn't want it earlier, but there was a business who was against hiring disabled people, hired one, and now is hired 4 people with disabilities because they realized that that barrier was no longer there and it was easy to accommodate them. And now they have 4 people with disabilities and they think that they work better. So by having the benchmarks or a percentage of, we have to have so many disabled people, as much as we don't want to do that, we do want to do that because we need to force employers to open their perspective. And I think it's one way to do that.
Anyone else have suggestions on the one policy or investment that would make the biggest difference?
In the work that I do, I would advance employment first, and that's the notion that people with disabilities can and should be offered the same opportunities and have a place in the workplace. And so in the work that I do, sometimes one of the barriers for the candidates is really understanding their benefits and how employment can sometimes affect benefits. And sometimes there's bad information that's given, like, oh, you shouldn't work more than 15 hours because you're going to lose this, this, and this. There are benefits counselors in Rhode Island through the Sherlock Center, and I'm happy to provide those resources. But that's one of the, the people, the candidates is a key component to what we're talking about. If there's fear about losing benefits, if there's fear about, I can't do this because somebody told me I couldn't, then that's a really big missing piece of what employment equity can look like. So in the work that I do, I think that there's a lot of work that our policymakers can do to make sure that people with disabilities understand what it means to work and still have benefits, or to not need benefits. Sometimes that can happen. So I think that would be my response to the question.
From what I've learned in my research is that the Americans with Disabilities Act is rarely updated. But it is a ever-changing field, and I think one thing that our representatives in Congress could do a great deal better on is really keeping up with the times. And I know Congress is a very slow-moving pace. Believe me, I'm a political science minor. I learn about it in class every day, how slow Congress is and how sometimes inefficient they are. But one thing that they really could do is really take retrospective looks maybe every year and just keep updating, making things more accessible, making the ADA just that much more clear for employers and really enforcing these requirements on them.
Yeah, I think education is it. I'd like to see more investment in education. When Tina comes to my class, I teach at Roger Williams University, I teach HR. She comes and visits the class. In the end, when they evaluate the class, they don't mention Gary, they mention Tina in the evaluation, right? So it just shows you that kind of impact. But I think the impact is like, they don't know. They don't know what they don't know. It's like, disabilities way over here in their head. And then when she comes, she shows, capabilities and work and her own company, her own business, and and a lot of bedazzle. So all of that I think is very important to what people need to see, and get them younger so that they're that they get what they need to see when they get in the workforce, instead of waiting for being in the workforce and then educate them. So I think that is a huge impact, and I do have to say she leaves quite an impression about capability, not about disability. I want to emphasize that when she visits class. So that's very important.
Yeah, and I'm sure the rhinestones and the shoes also have a lot to do with the bedazzling and in the classroom.
Well, it's the car.
I mean,
She bedazzles the car. That's crazy.
yeah, the car's all bedazzled too. But the one thing that we really want is I want people to see beyond my wheelchair. The whole idea, honestly, about the rhinestones on my wheelchair is it's an icebreaker. It's a way for people to start talking to me. And then when they start talking to me, a lot of people say that they don't see the wheelchair anymore and they don't see the disability anymore. They see the person, they see the knowledge, they see what I have to offer somebody. And that's the whole point. Once you get to know somebody, you get to know the whole person and not just the disability. And that's the point.
Right, right. Thank you so much for that reminder, Tina. All right, I would love to open up to audience questions. If you have them, if you would raise your hand, either via the tool or so I can see you. Yes, Lynn Corwin.
I think I finally have my audio working. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. I've only been trying for 40 minutes. So, yeah, I'm not that good with technology. So I envy those who are. One of the questions, and I appreciate Gary sending me a text saying, "Hey, do you need me to ask a question?" So, love you, Gary. Thank you for this session. This is awesome. I already sent a email to our Rhode Island SHRM new board chapter president, Jill, and said, we need to bring this program to Rhode Island SHRM because it's awesome. Rhode Island SHRM, for anybody who doesn't know, is Society for Human Resource Management. I guess my question is, how can we as individuals in the workplace and in society help to share the knowledge that that has been shared with us today?
Invite us in. Any one of us, invite us into your workplace. Have this conversation. This should not be a one and done conversation. This should be a conversation that happens once a month. Actually, I would like to have it more than once a month, but just opening the door and having the conversation, supporting us on legislation. We have a lot of legislation this year that we need to get passed. We need your support, written or coming in and testifying. If you're afraid to testify, come with one of us. See it a couple of times. You'll get used to it and you won't mind speaking up, because sometimes you get mad enough that you want to speak up on bills that you don't even know when you're in the room. So come and testify, support our legislation, volunteer. Volunteer for one of these organizations and just put yourself out there. That's my opinion anyway.
I will say from the Women's Fund perspective, particularly if we're talking about interview processes, we are advocates for having panel interviews so that there's more than one person who's evaluating a candidate, and also training those folks who are doing the interviews. As Peyote was saying, there may be opportunities ahead of time to work with those hiring managers, those panels, to identify where there may be some bias that's happening ahead of time that you can address. Be able to really talk about people's capabilities before they come in, and be able to ask questions that are really going to get at people's strengths. So that's what I have to add there. I see that Christina Batista has a question.
Yes. Hi, everyone. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone for this wonderful conversation that you all are having with us tonight. I can see both sides because I am an individual that has a physical disability, but my work used to be supporting those that also had disabilities and prepping them for job interviews and just getting them acclimated and what questions could be asked of them. For me personally, I'd say that when I go for an interview, I want the company to look at my resume and look at the skills I have. I have a master's degree, and at the end of the day, I know what my accommodations are. But I don't want somebody just to hire me because I check the boxes. I want them to hire me because of the skills that I can bring to the company. And then just talking a little bit more about accommodations in the workplace. Sometimes when you get a job, after being there a few months, you end up being really good friends with some of your coworkers and you build a rapport, and those can be your natural supports as well. So when we talk about, the fear of an employer of having to do so many accommodations, sometimes it can just be as simple as having a coworker be with that person for something. It could be a desk that gets lowered to the appropriate height. I mean, it's very small things, but I do understand where employers can be a little scared if they don't know. And like somebody said, you don't know what you don't know. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Christina. And Peyote?
Hi. Lynn, I was also going to ask about if you all were able to speak at our as speakers at our company. I didn't realize there was anyone else from my company on the call, but Lynn is a friend, coworker of mine. But yeah, would you guys be okay with being invited as speakers for us? Because that would be really awesome. Great. Cool.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I just sent you a Teams chat. I was like, hey, great to see you on the event tonight. So Pay and I serve on we serve on the action team on the belonging and engagement action team at Bradon University Health. So great to see you here.
But if we go, usually Lynn brings margaritas, right? I've never been to
a Hey, Gary, I'm still trying to get them to put a bar in at 15 LaSalle Square.
I absolutely believe that to be true, Miss HR.
Yeah.
I believe that.
We are actually working on getting Brown University ramp stamp of approved too, so we're working on that as well.
Yes, exactly.
Perfect. We can just email you after. Is that how that works? Perfect. Thank you.
I'll also quickly flag that I wanted to thank our sponsor for this evening, our in-kind sponsor who we made space available for us, and that is Blue Cross Blue Shield, which Tina, I believe they also, at least the main office, have a ramp stamp of approval. So yeah,
They're working on all of their blue stores right now, but the main hub is ramp stamp of approved. And I believe Neighborhood Healthcare of Rhode Island is also ramp stamp of approved. So I got to be fair to everyone. So
I did want to call it out just because we did hope to have this program in person this evening, and we look forward to a future opportunity where we may be able to do that, maybe do some sort of a mixer. And so I just want to again call out Blue Cross for making their space available for us, and then not using it. Hope we didn't put you out too much tonight. Any
well,
other? Oh, go
we can
ahead.
always revisit this in the spring and have a mixer in the spring and continue this conversation. Like I said, this conversation should not be a one and done. This should definitely be a continued conversation. So we're always up for a networking event.
Which sounds great. Are there other questions? All right. I think then that we'll do a quick closing thoughts for each of our speakers. What is just one thing you want people to take away from the program tonight? And so we'll start with Kim. We'll go to Bradon, Gary, and then Tina. So Kim.
You're on mute, Kim.
Darn it.
It is not a Zoom call unless somebody does that. So
Right.
You're so right. And I just never want it to be me. But here I am. Oh, well, sorry about that. So I would just encourage everyone to think about disability employment as as you would any other sort of inclusive employment, a welcoming space, a strong culture that's rooted in appreciating everyone's differences and skills and strengths, and just really encouraging a culture of appreciation. And as Kelly was recognizing, using that strengths forward approach, it's probably in many workplaces. If it's not, it's a great idea for everyone. So I guess I would just encourage you all to not think of it as something that's frightening or to have low expectations about. It's something to have really high expectations and feel hopeful about. The other thing, while I have the mic, is I just wanted to also mention peyote, that I know a lot of people who have experience speaking on panels that can speak from their firsthand experience. And so whether that's an employer or a person with an intellectual and developmental disability, I would be happy to connect you with people who have that lived experience, because sometimes I think that can be the most powerful. I would love to be a part of it. So if you're open to me having a +1 or 2, that would be great. Or if you eliminate me from the equation and go with that +1 or 2, that's cool too. I really am just happy to advance the mission, and we're never done. Or it's not a one and done, like Tina said. So happy to be a part of the movement.
Thanks, Kim. Brayden, what's one takeaway you want people to have this evening?
I would say stay a student, which is something that I'm beginning to learn in my latter years of college and in my educational journey, which is that I don't know everything. And it's something that has always been instilled in me, is that you're never the smartest person in the room, and if you think so, you're a fool. So just keep learning, keep moving forward, and do your best.
Thanks, Brayden. Gary?
All right, so Braden stole mine because I was going to say lifelong learner. I believe in being a lifelong learner in education. That's where I focus. I think that's how you can really help the world become a better place, because the more educated you are, the more you can help the world be educated and also do the right thing. So thank you, Jaden, for that, or Braden for that. Great stuff. And I would just say continue the education on this topic that is very important. So thank you.
And last but not least, Tina?
Oh, I have so much to say, but again, I am a person with a disability. I am in this world on a daily basis, whether it's with the Access Board or with my own nonprofit or just with different communities. And I don't know everything. I don't ever claim to know everything. I learn something new every day. That's the whole point, and I agree with Bradon. But I think the one thing I'd like to leave with everybody is open your perspective, open your mind. What you think is impossible is actually possible. You need to open your perspective to other people and not take the visual. Sometimes I wish a lot of people were blind for a certain point of time because you don't see the imperfections or you don't see the differences in people, and you just take it on value from, you know, what you hear around you. So, you know, put yourself in a different situation. You know, we like to put people in wheelchairs to navigate around. We put people with blindfolds on so they can navigate that way. We put people with headphones on so we can navigate that way. Navigate in a different way than you normally do. Open your perspective to navigate in a lot of different areas and put yourself in other people's wheelchairs, as I say. Don't just sit there and make a difference. It's one of the mottos that I live by, and I hope you live by it too. Kelly, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
As always, I enjoy moderating these conversations. I'm most excited about being able to put the updated equity in the workplace toolkit back in the world. There will be some more work being done by Bryant University students this semester on that. And we hope to have something publishable by the end of spring. Until then, I'm looking forward to partnering with Tina on some other uh, disability justice types of opportunities. Tina, you want to talk about the event in April? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
May. We
May.
have the United States Access Board is visiting Rhode Island for the very first time. This is a once in a 50-year opportunity. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. So the entire Access Board will be here for a week, but we will be hosting the first ever Rhode Island Accessibility Summit. We've already have a ton of people registered. A lot of elected officials are already registered, which is completely unheard of because their schedules aren't even ready yet. So we would like you to partner with that. We'd like you to be a part of that. We would love your voice to be a part of that. So I put in the chat to go onto our website and sign up for our newsletter. All of the information will be there, from our legislative initiatives to how to partner, how to sponsor, how to be involved with that. And we're also working with Bryant University again this year with a new class of students to make some checklists for our RAMP approved website. So there's so much opportunity, but you want to be a volunteer, a committee member, or possibly a board member, RAMP is looking for you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time and attention. We look forward to your feedback, and have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Nice job, everybody.
Yeah, really thank you everyone for your participation this evening. Really appreciate you. Thanks again to Bryant, all the students work on the toolkit, and yeah, we look forward to future conversations.
Cool. Great.
Oh,
Thank
I
you,
will
Kelly.
Tina, I will talk to you soon.
Okay.
Like when we hang up. Kelly, we'll talk later.
Thank
Bradon,
you,
great
everybody.
job. Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, Bradon, incredible job.
Yeah, that was.
You know, you hung right in there. You did a great job. Thank you, Kim and Gary.
Yes. Yes.
I would love to do more events, especially with all of you, because like we all seem to have a different piece of the same topic. Like I said, networking events